Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. And if you're new, my name is Anne and I garden in Zone 5B in Northern Illinois. So today is February. It is actually a couple days into the month and I wanted to go over the seeds that I will be sowing and starting in this month of February. About a month ago, I had talked about some January and February seed starts. So I might be repeating a few of those, but for the sake of doing a February seed starting video, I thought I would run through all of the seeds that I have organized here in front of me. And the first thing that we should talk about first, though, is based on your last frost date is when you can really determine when you should be starting your seeds. So most seed packages, and I happen to have yarrow in front of me here because I just sowed some of these yesterday. In yesterday's video, I did some soil blocking. And so on the back of your package, this particular one is from rareseeds.com or Baker Creek. And it reads at the back, perennial in zones 5 to 8, surface sow seeds indoors 8 to 12 weeks before your last frost. So because I had looked at this a few weeks ago, I had actually also winter sowed some yarrow, and yesterday I put some under the grow lights here in soil blocks. And for me, I looked up my last frost date by going onto Google and put in my city, my state, and my zip code. And with that came up, let's just do it right now. When I Googled it, it said that it ranged between April 20th to April 30th. And so what I actually like to flush that against is what happened last year and maybe even a couple years back. In my case, we've only been here 3 years. We're coming up to our fourth year, actually, our fourth season. So last year, I recalled because I was sowing seeds for the first time in a big way anyway, that we did in fact not have any frost after around April 20th. So I just basically counted back from April 20th. In your case, you might want to push that further. A lot of people are comfortable with middle of May. So you would just count back on your calendar based on the seeds that you're growing. And in this case, 8 to 12 weeks. I go with the longest, the 12 weeks. And I went back and it came to around the last week of January, which is why I started sowing these last week of January. And of course, you can go anywhere from, there's a 4 week span there of 8 to 12. So I can plant these for early spring anywhere between January, end of January to the end of February. So we're safe there. And I wanted to just go through all of the seeds that I've already pulled out. And before I do that, I wanted to share with you just briefly. I think a few people have been showing their organization, and I did do this last year. This is a photo box unit that I ordered on Amazon, and I like the multicolors. They come in clear cases as well. But what I did was I actually, some people organize their stickers or their labels by flower groupings or flower names or herbs or vegetables. But what I actually did was I sorted everything and organized everything by the actual number of weeks before last frost. So my very first one, the label's actually fallen off, but I know it's my very first one. It would have read, 10 to 12 weeks before last frost, and it would have had the dates of end of January to middle of February, that sort of thing. And sure enough, in that case, I put my seeds that I was safe to sow starting at the end of January, and that was yarrow. I did also keep my packages from last year of stock in here in case I wanted to re-sow these, and I have decided not to because I don't have that much grow space outside. I have 6 raised beds dedicated to cut flowers, and then an L shape, which is almost the equivalent of 2 for my kitchen garden. And I do have a few flowers that I put in there, like marigolds and nasturtiums, but it's really dedicated for, um, peppers and tomatoes and so forth. So I also had all of my pansies, and so I had viola and antique Leta viola. So I had these 2 violas, which I've already sown, but I don't want to get into too much detail because I did sow those and they are in the greenhouse in under the trays. And I also had Arkwright ruby viola, Berna velvet blue pansy, and last year I grew celestial blue pansy, Lake of Thune pansy. And I had a few of these left over, so I had actually put these in my winter sowing milk jugs. So if you missed my video on sowing pansies and sweet peas, please take a look at my series of seed sowing. And if you want more details on how I sowed pansies and what their traits are and so forth. If you want some tips on growing pansies and violas as well as sweet peas, I'll link those videos at the end of my video on the end screen, and it'll take you to the series of seed starting. I did also grow some agastache, which is a perennial. And although this belongs in the 4 to 6 week, because if you look under planting instructions, it says to start indoors 4 to 6 weeks before last frost, I had actually gone ahead and winter sowed these. So because it's a frost hardy perennial, and it's perennial in zones 5 to 10. So I'm going to put this back. So my 4 to 6 week compartment starts March 17th to March 31st. So in there, I have my amaranth, alyssum, dahlia, and so forth. And I don't want to go through those today because hopefully as we go through each of the growing weeks, of whether it's 10 to 12 weeks, 8 to 10 weeks, 6 to 8, 4 to 6, and so on. I will plan to do a video for each of those sowing periods, and then together we can decide, okay, let's do we want to grow those that month or those weeks. So just getting back to my section here on what we can grow in February, we've gone through the stalks, the pansies, and of course we did sweet peas a couple weeks ago, and I did those in my deep root trays, or my trainers they call them, those tall trays. And again, there's a video on that where I had 2 types of sweet peas that I sowed. So that was in my first section. So I'm going to digress a little bit and go back and forth a little bit about winter sowing, because winter sowing, as most of you know, is the type of sowing where you are sowing in a container that emulates a greenhouse effect. And so most people use milk jugs, and we cut that milk jug, and you put your soil in there, your potting mix, and you sprinkle your seeds, you water them, you put some ventilation holes and leave the top open, and the water and the rain will seep through. And then in spring, you can untape, it gets taped up, you untape that, and you should have some beautiful seedlings that you can put into the ground or pot up depending on the seedling or the size. So I also have here some lupins that are usually to be sown 4 to 6 weeks, 4 to 8 weeks, sorry, before planting out. But I had wanted to put lupins in my winter sowing, so I'm putting that aside over here with my carrots that I also want to try winter sowing. A couple minutes ago, my neighbor dropped off a bunch of juice jugs, the clear ones, at my front door. So it looks like I am going to be doing some more winter sowing. And I did read or hear somewhere, I think on YouTube, it could have been M.I. Gardner, that in our zone, in Zone 5B in Northern Illinois, that or in Michigan, in zones 5 to 6, that it's really a good idea to get your winter sowing done before Valentine's Day. And I suspect that has a lot to do with the number of weeks remaining of winter weather, because virtually you're trying to cold stratify your seedlings and anything actually that you see on a package, any seedling like delphiniums that need cold stratification, or poppies, those are good contenders for winter sowing. So I might jump around today on what we should be sowing in February under grow lights, as well as we will talk about what we could be winter sowing outdoors. So the next seed that I'm super excited about is, and there are a couple varieties, but this particular one, Blue Monday Sage Salvia, it says to start indoors 10 weeks before the last frost date, and it prefers full sun, thrives in mild humidity and well-drained soil. So I will be sowing these 10 weeks before. So since I started the end of, if I just go back to my calendar and I count back 10 weeks, that brings me to around the end of the first week of February. So these are definitely on my list of ones to winter sow, and you sow them 1/16 inch below the surface of the soil, and prefers full sun, thrives in mild humidity and well-drained soil, and it is frost hardy, and it sprouts in 10 to 30 days. Um, Minimum full sun, 8 to 12. So I grew these last year in my raised bed, my cut flower raised bed, in my red, white, and blue bed. I called it red, white, and blue because I had red flowers such as amaranth, and I guess I had some dark cosmos in there, and then I had white with my white cosmos, and then I had the blue salvia, and I guess it was all my filler flowers that were in the range of red, white, and blue. So I'm really excited to grow more of these. This is another contender for winter sowing. So now that I have a lot, I might try some of these in winter sowing, but I'm also going to likely put these in soil blocks, because I recall doing some salvia in soil blocks. I do have 150 seeds here, and these were packed for 2024, so I do want to try and use these up. So I think I will go ahead and winter sow these, as well as start them in my soil blocks this month. I have 3 types of poppies here, and I did winter sow this particular one, the Papaver poppy. And this whimsical mix comes in a trio of beautiful colors, magnificently ruffled shimmer petals leave an impression with the contrast of their black centers, ranging in bright colors of orange, red, and pink. And this mix will put on a show for around 10 days before it heads into dormancy for the next season. So they're not a long flowering flower. However, it only takes 14 to 28 days to germinate. And you can direct sow these in late fall if you're in zones 8 to 10, or early spring if you're in zones 3 to 7, as we are here. So I did not have much luck direct sowing these, and they want to be sowed about 1/8 of an inch deep. So I went ahead and winter sowed these. Um, I am tempted to sow some of these poppies in my beds where I will be having more of my filler flowers. These ones here, the amazing gray poppies that I sowed already with winter sowing. I have a few. They tend to always talk about poppies as winter sowing or direct sowing. I think I might actually try these in soil blocks, because another nice thing about soil blocks is, because you're not putting your seedling and it's not rooting in an actual pot. So when you go to lift that soil block, you're not disturbing any roots because the roots are contained within that soil block. So I think that this type of flower, poppies, is a great contender for soil blocking. So I'm going to put that in my pile here for soil blocking. And other flowers that like to be that don't like to have their roots disturbed are sunflowers, and those are other flowers that would be very good in soil blocking. So anyway, those are later spring sowed items. So this particular gray poppy, which is a purpley gray, I have a teeny bit of seeds left. I want to try those out in my soil blocking. So that's my pile here. And I have a bunch of purple coneflower, which is for 4 to 6 weeks. And I believe I was going to winter sow these. So typically you don't start indoors till 4 to 6 weeks before. And I did try these in either pots or soil blocks last year, 4 to 6 weeks before my last frost, and they didn't really do that well. So I'm really going to try to change it up a little bit and put it in a winter sowing jug. And that's another good point, is that if you've tried in previous years to sow a seedling in a pot or soil blocking or whatever method you chose, and it didn't work out and you still have some seeds left over, it's always a good idea to change it up. And so with this, because I recall it not doing great, and I did put a few seedlings. They're very slow to germinate. I remember, or to grow. Like they say, it germinates 10 to 20 days, but the seedlings took quite a while to get to a mature height and to plant. And I do only have one bed by my mailbox where I have some coneflower, and I have a couple seedlings out there, and I remember them just being very passive, I guess is the word. So I'm going to try, it does say it's 65 days to maturity and they grow 3 to 5 feet tall. So I am going to try to put these in my winter sowing, and they are a perennial. So, and they want to be 1/2 inch deep. So I'm going to put that in my pile for winter sowing. This is also with the more poppies, the black swan. So I think we said we were going to try to either winter sow these or try them in soil blocks. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in my pile for winter sowing. I did already winter sow a bunch of these, and they did really well as direct sowing. So I didn't actually do some blue ones. So I think I might just put those in my winter sowing pile here, because I believe I have another, let's see, 5 jugs plus another 5. I have at least 10 jugs out there. So I think I can winter sow up to 10 different flower varieties, or carrots and lettuce even, I'm thinking of trying. So let's see how many we've got here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, up to 8. I could probably combine my poppies together, so that would be 1, my coneflower 2, my poppies over here, that's 1. I could just combine all of these together and divide up the container with some markers. My salvia will be another, my buttons, my lupin, and then my carrots. So I'm up to 6 right now. And the other one that I failed to grow, and I mentioned, were black-eyed Susans. I failed to put these in the winter sowing. These you can sow outdoors anytime. They are a perennial. They bloom between July to September, and they grow 2 feet high. So these were some older seeds that my mom got in the mail and gave them to me. So she has given these to me 2 years in a row, and I have a more recent package. I believe that's good for 2025. So I'm going to winter sow these as well. So I think I'm going to put those in, mix those up maybe with coneflower, and just put a little divider in the jug. Okay, so that leads me to snapdragons. These are my favorite #1 cut flower, And I did a video sometime in the summer, it was towards the end of the summer there, that talked about my top 10 cut flowers. And snapdragons were number one. And the reason they were number one is because they make you feel as a new seed starter that you are a pro. Um, I basically sowed several seeds within one 24 cell tray, and they just all grew. And the thing with snapdragons is, first off, the seeds are really tiny. So it's really difficult to just sow a couple seeds per cell. So I must have sowed maybe 3 or 4 seeds per cell. They all germinated, and you're supposed to go in and thin those out. Take your strongest seedling, let that one live, and just cut away at the other less healthy seedlings. Now, I couldn't bring myself to thin those out by cutting them away. So I actually split those seedlings, pulled out the roots by the leaves, and plopped them into other seed pots, and basically tripled my um, trays of snapdragons, and I planted them all out early May to middle of May. And I swear all I did was continue to cut on them, and they just kept coming. So they are truly a cut and come again cut flower. And I didn't even get a chance to succession sow, which snapdragons do like to be succession sowed. And when you go to the Johnny's website, and I'll just talk about Johnny's for a minute, because I did order 3 snapdragons from Johnny's, even though I didn't think I needed more snapdragon seeds. But the reason I fell for them on Johnny's is because they have just come up with some new pelleted seeds. So I have here, and this is kind of a lumpy one because there's a tube in here. So I'm going to show these to you. uh, Snapdragons are a annual cut flower that are edible, and they like to be surface sowed into open or 20 row flats, and or preferred seedling container. They are to be sowed 8 to 10 weeks before your last frost. So in my case, that would bring me to mid to late February. And light is required for germination, and you put a fine layer of vermiculite covering the seed to help maintain the moisture. I'm just reading the instructions here. You can transplant them into 72 cell plug plats when true leaves appear, approximately 3 to 4 weeks after sowing. So I will definitely be doing a video and an extension of the updates on snapdragons, because these are just, to me, the most prolific and the most beautiful cut flowers that I have grown. They say that direct seeding is not recommended. I have seen some people try to do their snapdragons in winter sowing, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that works. I won't be doing that, only because I was so successful in my 24 cell trays, and I want to continue to be successful. So they germinate in 7 to 4 days, and after seedlings have 3 to 5 true leaves, growing at 50 to 55, that you pinch them back to 1.5 to 2 inches when seedlings are about 3 to 4 inches tall, to encourage branching. So we'll go through that, but I did want to show you um, there are fewer seeds in this pack. There's only 50 seeds in here, and this is a hybrid snapdragon. And I did get all of the, let me pronounce this correctly or not, Potomac yellow F1 pelleted. So that's the first one. And this is Potomac pink F1. And I'll drop in the photos, of course. And Potomac lavender F1. So, and Johnny's, they have different groupings of snapdragons. And on other sites, I noticed they don't mention that. So they basically will tell you whether it's an early summer, midsummer, or late summer bloomer. And the Potomac series I want to show up close here. Hopefully you can see this. And when I go to sow these, you will you'll be able to see the difference between the seeds that aren't pelleted versus the ones that are. So they basically give you a nice hard shell. It's usually colored. In this case, it's yellow. And there just makes it just more visible, and you're not having to waste your seeds and aren't essentially going to have to thin out as many seedlings. And that's what I love about these being pelleted, is that I'm going to be doing less thinning out, which I have to admit is very tedious, but you know, I love seed starting and I just find it so relaxing. As I mentioned, there's usually groups 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and these fall under the groups 3 and 4, which are warm seasoned snapdragons, and they're bred for optimal performance under long days, high light levels, and warm temperatures. So it's definitely towards the end of summer. So I definitely will be planting these early in the season so that they knowing that they're going to be blooming later in the summer for me. February is a very exciting month because we are going to be seed starting all of these seeds, as well as, spoiler alert, I will be in my next video planting tulips out in the raised bed and probably in some containers as well. Yes, I will be planting tulips in February. So I hope you join me for that great exercise, and I promise you it will be successful. So staying on the vein of snapdragons, last year I grew 3 types of snapdragons. I got these high mowing organic seeds from Gardener's Supply, I believe, and they're called Lion's Mouth. And they are the most beautiful snapdragons in that they come in an assortment of the oranges, the pinks, the deep burgundy, the white, as well as, I believe this is where I got the striped, almost like the apple blossom, where it's like two-tone on a blossom. And these are to be sown 8 to 10 weeks before last frost. And I have so many, and I'm so thrilled. This alone, I could have sown an entire bed of snapdragons. So I'm going to be sowing these, and I think I need to separate my snapdragons. I think I did at one time have its own section. So I'm going to put these in my snapdragon bin for now. I also sowed last year these tall deluxe. So these are from Baker Creek, and similarly, they come in multiple colors, and they don't tell you whether or not they are a series 1, 2, 3, or 4, but I know that some of these were already blooming when I put them in the ground in May, and they continue to bloom throughout the summer, from May to June to July, all the way through October. So I have 2 packages of these, and there's minimum 600. So these are a tender perennial, native to Southern Europe, tall flower spikes, and pinch the young plants. Pinching them back will encourage more blooms. Basically, cut and come again. They will continue to bloom for you. They are not supposed to be frost hardy, and yet they say they're a tender perennial. So it really depends on your zone. And you'll see when we get out into the garden in a few days that I did not cut back my snapdragons yet. And that's because I wanted to see if I would see any that were going to repeat for me or perennialize to this year from last. So definitely repeating those, and my Potomac series are new. So I also did these beautiful black print snapdragons, and I think I talked about these in one of my top 10 videos of top 10 cut flowers. So again, I have like 600 of these, so there's quite a few. I really didn't need to buy more snapdragon seeds, but I am dedicating 2 4x8 beds to snapdragons. And Orange Wonder is another one, and also to be surface sowed, same variety. And I did not plant these last year, but I'm looking forward to these because they're a nice peachy yellow orange color way. And then from MI Gardner, I also ordered during one of their sales, end of season sales, some white snowflake snapdragons and some rose snapdragons. And they both say to sow 8 to 10 weeks before last frost. So I'm trying to see here if it tells you. So it does say that these are perfect for spring bouquets. So they don't tell you if they're, in the groups 1, 2, 3, or 4. However, it mentions spring bouquets. So I'm going to assume that these are spring bloomers. So we will find out together whether or not these become prolific throughout the spring summer months. So look forward to sowing some of those. And they do grow to be 2.5 feet tall. For the same with these, 2.5 to 3 feet tall. I do remember Black Prince not being that tall. These ones grow, the Potomac series grow 3 to 4 feet tall. So I'm excited about those. Those will be your taller varieties, which is nice because the thing about snapdragons is the first cut, the first harvest that you get, you're going to find that the stalks are pretty thick and they're a taller plant. And then as you continue through the summer and you cut and they come again, you will find that the stalks are quite a bit thinner and a little weaker and sometimes not as straight. um, but that was fine for me because I was just growing for my own personal bouquets. But I think if you become more professional at it, that you will probably want to replace some of those weaker blooms with some new plantings, and that's where the groups 3 and 4, like the Potomac series, comes into play, because then you're going to have some nice, fresh, tall snapdragons in your garden beds. So I look forward to doing better that way. But as I mentioned, I just am quite frugal. And if I see something blooming, I don't have the heart. Our season is so short. I don't have the heart to, cut them back completely and replace them. If they're dried up, obviously they're finished. The way stock were basically one and done, and I did replace my stock bed with more snapdragons and zinnias last year. So I'm not planning to do one and dones this year. I do want to continue to grow flowers that are continuous throughout the summer because our season is so short. And the last one here that I found is my Monaco orange, which is an F1. And these are also 3 to 4 feet tall. Hybrid Snapdragon Monaco Orange, since I'm on the Johnny site. High quality, 5 to 10 days earlier to bloom than the Potomac Orange in our trials. So it's good for spring plantings for early summer harvests. So this will be an early summer harvest, the Monaco Orange variety. So that's good to know. And I'm going to put that up front with my Potomac in the back. So as you can see, I have, gosh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, same pack, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh my goodness, 10 varieties of snapdragons. I could probably open a snapdragon farm, flower farm. Onwards to petunias. I have 2 types of petunias that are to be grown. Grow these tiny seedlings indoors for 8 to 10 weeks and set out after last frost. So these are to be surface sowed, and they are not frost hardy. So I bought these not for my raised garden beds, but for my bedding plants or my containers. So I have Cosmic Cherry Petunia, Super Bissima Cosmic Cherry. These mammoth blooms are bursting with cherry flavor. The flower heads have ruffled edges and reach a whopping 7 inches across in a mix of magenta to violet colors. These are an edible flower, and they have a delicious cherry flavor that can be used in baking and homemade beverages. Surface sow and pinch the young shoots makes them more of a compact habit. So I'm super excited about these. Can you see those roughly petals? And then I have Violet Wild, which is a little more common. These are, you surface sow these, keep uniformly moist and very warm, grow tiny seedlings 8 to 10 weeks. And these are a South American native wildflower, low growing, heat tolerant, floriferous, easy to grow, and blooms all summer long. It was traditionally used as a hallucinogenic. Do not ingest, not widely studied, and could be toxic. So difference of toxic to edible, not to be confused. What else do we have? We have Dusty Miller here that I don't remember if no, I did not sow these last year. We all know Dusty Miller. They are a beautiful kind of silver, I would call this a filler foliage, and it's a tender perennial in zones 8 to 10. It's an excellent bedding plant, great for mixed containers and fresh cut filler. And I can't remember if this is the tall growing variety, but I definitely like putting these in with my containers for fillers just to give it a break from just, mounds of flowers. So you do sow these 8 to 10 weeks before last frost. Do not cover seed as light age germination. I can put a light covering of vermiculite, bottom water, transplant to cell packs or larger containers when first true leaves appear. Direct seeding is not recommended. And they will germinate 7 to 10 days. And they like sun to part shade. So Dusty Miller. Oh, one last flower I have here is Spielarton Mix Bee Balm. And these are a beautiful mix of pollinator-friendly perennials, and they're in shades of mauve, lavender, purple, pink, and more. Will entice butterflies, bees, and of course hummingbirds. I probably do have room for more winter sowing, but I only have, I do have 100 seeds. So yeah, let's give these a try in winter sowing as well. And in a few weeks, we'll be able to take a look at that. And I will also probably try these in my soil blocks. So I will add that here. And then on to not as exciting, but peppers. I have got some peppers here that I ordered from Baker Creek for my wonderful husband, Greg. He loves his Thai red chili peppers, and these take 90 days. So you do want to start these in bright light 8 to 12 weeks before the last frost date. So I need to get these going. A heat mat does help to warm the soil and speed germination. And I can tell you that peppers take a lot of patience and they are not frost hardy. So I need to get these into the under the grow lights very, very soon. I also have some Craig's Grand jalapeno peppers, an improved jalapeno developed at Redwood City Seeds, a big fat jalapeno that is perfect for making lots of salsa, thick, flavorful flesh. Start indoors in bright light 8 to 12 weeks before the last frost. I got some free datil peppers and they actually germinated and did well. And we collected quite a few. We harvested quite a few. That is basically it for today's video. I hope you found that fun and helpful. And I did mention that in my next video, I ordered more tulips. I was inspired by Bunny Guinness. We all know who Bunny Guinness is. She did a video about planting her tulips in January into February. And I looked at our weather, and last week we had a warm spell, and then this Thursday I should be out in the garden. It's going up to, I believe, 40 degrees, but it's going to feel much cooler because of the wind chill, I guess they call it. But I am going ahead because I have 2 boxes of tulip bulbs. I think I bought something like 300 tulips that are sitting in my garage right now that just arrived yesterday and today. So I hope you join me again for that video as I plant those tulip bulbs into my cut flower raised beds. So thanks again for joining me, and I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.